Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to hit subscribe and give this video a like. It helps more than you might think. Decades ago, deep within the vast wilderness of the Appalachian Mountains, lay a forgotten trail shrouded in mystery. Known to locals as the Silent Trail, it was a path that no one dared to tread, not since the stories began. Whispers spoke of the hiker, a mysterious figure said to roam the area, eternally searching. Some believed this enigmatic presence protected the lost, while darker tales claimed it sought their souls. No one could agree on what it truly was, a man, a beast, or something entirely otherworldly. The legend remained just that, until the late 20th century. In 1978, Maya Reed, an avid adventurer with a passion for exploring the unknown, ventured into the wilderness, determined to uncover its secrets. She vanished without a trace. Weeks passed with no sign of her. Then, on April 15th, a hiker's backpack was discovered near the edge of a riverbank, partially buried in mud. The bag was wet, as though it had drifted for miles, only now coming to rest. Upon inspection, a chilling clue was found, a voice recorder tucked inside. It was later confirmed to belong to Maya. What the recordings contained, or whether they revealed any answers, was never disclosed to the public. The discovery raised more questions than it answered. How had the bag ended up there? Where had she gone? Was she still alive? When the recordings were played, they revealed details of her journey, things they had never heard before. Days later, her mother revealed that she had found her daughter, but what she said was far from reassuring. "When I found her," she began in a trembling voice, "she was different. She was there, in the dark, still and unmoving. But what stood out the most was that her eyes were gone." The words hung heavily in the air, and it felt as if time had momentarily stopped. What had happened during those lost days? What had she seen? Or perhaps what had she failed to see? Eventually, months later, they were able to piece together part of what had happened. But all Maya could remember was a shadowy blur of events, pieces of fear and silence. And then she began to tell them everything she still recalled, starting with these words. "We can be brave or think we are, but sometimes we just need to listen. I wish I had." I can still remember it like it was yesterday, a dark, gloomy day. The rain pelted softly against the window pane, the world outside muted under the heavy clouds. I sat across from my mother, her brow furrowed with worry, the lines deep in her face. "Maya," she said, her voice filled with quiet desperation, "you know how much I want for you. A stable life, a good job, a family. Nursing is a noble profession, and it would make me so proud." I shifted uncomfortably in my seat, my fingers nervously twisting the hem of my skirt. I loved my mother, I truly did, but her dreams for me felt suffocating. I longed for something more. Something beyond the safe, predictable life she envisioned for me. I wanted adventure. I wanted to feel the wind in my hair, the sun on my skin, to explore the unknown. "Mom," I began, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. "I appreciate your concern, but my heart lies elsewhere. I want to travel, to see the world, to experience different cultures and people." I saw the disappointment flash across her face, her lips pressed into a tight line, but she didn't say anything at first. Then came the question, the one she always asked when she didn't understand. "But Maya, what about your future? What about security?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "I know it's not the road you envisioned for me," I said softly, "but it's the one I have to take. I promise, I'll work hard, I'll be safe, and I'll make you proud." There was a long pause then, heavy and uncomfortable. I could feel her gaze on me, searching for any hint of doubt in my words. But I stood firm. I had made my decision. That night we argued. Harsh words were exchanged, but the fight ended not with resolution, but with an unbearable quiet. Days passed, and we didn't speak. The house felt colder, the walls pressing in on me. We were like two ships passing in the night, each lost in our own thoughts. I missed her warmth, her laughter, but I also resented her. She had always been so determined to control my life, to shape my future in her image. It wasn't the life I wanted, but it was the one she had chosen for me. A life of safety, predictability, and certainty. It was hers, not mine, and the more time passed, the more that distance between us grew. It was as if a chasm had opened between our worlds. And with that growing divide, I came to realize one undeniable truth. I had to be out there, far from this stillness, far from the life she had planned for me. I had to leave. One evening it was time for our usual quiet dinner. But I didn't come out to eat. I was tired of living that life. I remember hearing a soft tap on the door. When I opened it, I found her standing there. I thought she had come to call me for dinner, but instead she sat beside me and just looked at me. I couldn't quite place why she looked at me like that. And then, it happened. "Maya," she began, "I've been thinking." My heart pounded. I held my breath, waiting for the inevitable lecture or the stern warning. I didn't know which, but to my surprise, her tone was different. It was gentle, almost apologetic. "I know how much you admire your father, how much you want to follow in his footsteps, and perhaps I've been too stubborn, too set in my ways. I've decided," she continued, "that you should pursue your dreams. Travel the world, explore, experience. Just be careful." I couldn't believe my ears. My mother, the woman who had always insisted on safety and security, was now encouraging me to embrace the unknown. It felt surreal, as if the words were coming from someone else. But whatever the reason for her change of heart, I was grateful. Tears welled up in my eyes as I tried to speak, but no words came out. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind raced. I had never been happier. I thought about the places I would visit, the people I would meet, the adventures I would have. I began my journey as an adventurer. 2 months, 60 days of travel, each one a new adventure carved into my memory. The initial burst of excitement hadn't faded. It had only intensified. I learned basic languages, enough to barter with street vendors and ask for directions. I slept in budget hostels, met fellow travelers from across the globe, and shared stories around campfires beneath star-dusted skies. The fear of being alone had vanished. However, the constant movement and lack of routine began to take its toll. I missed my mother. Had I been too hasty, too focused on my own desires, too blind to see how much I hurt her? I didn't know what to think, but one thing was certain. I needed to go home. So I did. Maybe if I had known, I wouldn't have gone back. One evening, while sitting in a quiet diner, I overheard a group of old-timers speaking in hushed tones. They spoke of the Appalachian Mountains, a place whispered about in legends. Strange occurrences, a hidden trail, and a mysterious figure who roamed it. The hiker, they called him. It sounded like a tale meant to scare children, a local ghost story. But something about their conversation, the way their voices dropped to a whisper, piqued my curiosity. I'd hiked through the Amazon, the Himalayas, and the Australian outback, facing real dangers like venomous snakes and treacherous terrain. A haunted wilderness? Hardly. I scoffed at the notion. The Appalachian Mountains was a mere day's hike from Harper's Ferry, and I knew what I needed to do. That evening, I told my mother about my intention to hike in the Appalachian Mountains. I had never seen her so angry before. Her face flushed, and her voice trembled with emotion as she spoke. She too believed in these superstitions, maybe more than anyone else. She had never reacted so strongly to one of my plans before. "Maya, you cannot go to those mountains. It's dangerous, cursed. People have disappeared there." I tried to reason with her, to explain that it was just a superstition, a myth, but she was adamant, her eyes wide with fear. "I won't allow it. You're not going." It was clear I couldn't change her mind. For weeks I tried convincing her, but she was too headstrong, too stubborn. I could see that no matter what I said, it wouldn't make a difference, and so I made a decision. I would go no matter the cost. I had to prove to her, and to everyone else, that it was all a myth and nothing more. In the early morning of that day, I packed my backpack. I carefully selected my gear: a sturdy pair of hiking boots, a GPS and compass, a warm jacket, a flashlight, and a first aid kit. I also packed my recorder, ready to document my adventure, capturing every step of my journey. What I was about to do felt risky, perhaps even foolish, but it was a risk I was willing to take. I had to follow my heart, pursue my dreams, and prove to myself that fear wouldn't hold me back no matter the obstacles in my way. Before leaving, I wrote a note to my mother. I explained my reasons for going, assuring her that I would be careful. I promised to return by the weekend, and when I was done writing, I placed the note on the kitchen table. I knew she would be worried, but I also had to do this for myself. It was something I needed to prove. I slipped out of the house that morning, silently, as the first light of dawn touched the horizon. My heart raced with excitement, but also with the weight of the decision I had just made. I headed for the mountains, determined to uncover the truth about the myths that had haunted the people of our town for so long. The air was cool and damp, the kind that seeped into your bones. I breathed it in deeply, the scent of wet earth and decaying leaves filling my nostrils. The towering trees filtered the sunlight into soft, shifting patterns as I walked, their shadows dancing along the trail. From time to time, my thoughts drifted back to the note I'd left on the kitchen table. A pang of guilt lingered, sharp and insistent. I could already imagine the disappointment in my mother's eyes when she found it. Even with the note, I knew it wouldn't be enough. She would worry, maybe even be angry. But I hoped she would understand, eventually. Besides, I planned to return by the weekend, when everything would go back to normal, or so I thought. I quickened my pace as a wave of exhilaration washed over me. Adventure called, and I answered eagerly. When I reached a small stream, I settled on a fallen log, its damp, cool surface soothing against my skin. I closed my eyes and let the wilderness envelop me. The sound of trickling water and the rustling leaves were like a balm, quieting the noise in my head. In that moment, I felt truly at peace. But the peace didn't last. When I started hiking again, I noticed it, the silence. Not the kind I cherished, but an unnatural stillness. No birdsong, no wind through the leaves, just the sound of my own breath and the soft crunch of moss beneath my boots. I'd hiked many trails before, but none had ever been this quiet. Still, the stillness didn't unnerve me. If anything, I found it oddly beautiful. Hours passed and the path led me to a fork, 3 distinct directions vanishing into the forest. I frowned. I'd studied the maps carefully before setting out, but this junction hadn't been marked. Unease prickled at the edges of my thoughts, but I brushed it aside. Pulling out my GPS, I waited for it to load. The screen flickered, then froze, its lines distorting into a mess of meaningless symbols. I stared at it in disbelief. The signal must be weak, I told myself, slipping it back into my bag. I retrieved my compass next, hoping it would guide me. For a moment, it worked. The needle pointed resolutely to the left and I took a step in that direction. Then it spun wildly, as if caught in the grip of an unseen force. I froze. Strong magnetic interference, I reasoned, though the thought offered little comfort. Both tools rendered useless, I reached for my map. Its worn edges felt reassuring beneath my fingertips and I studied it carefully. I traced the lines with my finger, searching for landmarks, for answers. And then I chose a route. The air grew heavier as I walked. Strange markings appeared on the trees, deep, jagged scratches, almost claw-like. My mind spun, wondering what kind of creature could have made them. At the end of the track, something glinted on the forest floor. I bent down to pick it up, a broken compass, rusted and tarnished. Scattered nearby were other strange items, a shattered watch, a torn piece of fabric, a decayed, half-eaten meal. These weren't just random trash. They were the remnants of other hikers. No matter how much I tried to convince myself that the place was normal, deep down, I knew it wasn't. Suddenly, my foot caught on something buried in the dirt. I stumbled forward, hitting the ground hard. As I pushed myself up, I noticed a strange bulge beneath the soil. My curiosity overtook my fear. I clawed at the dirt, my fingers trembling as the shape emerged, a worn leather bag. I pulled it free, and a wave of foul stench hit me like a wall. Gagging, I covered my nose with my sleeve. My hands trembled as I worked at the knot. Inside the bag, a nightmare awaited. human remains, decayed, hideous, and twisted. I stumbled back, bile rising in my throat. Vomit burned my mouth as I emptied my stomach onto the ground. Wild animals, I thought. It must have been animals. But the logical part of my mind rejected that. Animals don't bury bodies in bags. I forced myself to stand, my legs trembling beneath me. As I pressed on, the surroundings felt different, darker. I came across a freshly dug grave, a shallow pit with disturbed earth. My breath hitched. Who had dug it, and why? The discovery of the bag had already unsettled me, but the sight of the grave took my fear to a whole new level. Then I saw him. Ahead on the track, a figure stood motionless. He wore a faded raincoat, the hood concealing his face. Something about him was off. The fabric of his raincoat dripped with water, though the sky above was clear. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaky. He didn't move, yet I felt an odd pull toward him, curiosity mingled with dread. I glanced back at the path I had just taken. My heart sank. My footprints had vanished. The moss looked untouched, as if I had never been there. I turned back. The figure was still there, unmoving. "Hello?" I tried again, louder this time. Still no response. Then I noticed the glint of something in his hand, a silver tool. The hood slipped back, revealing his face, or what was left of it. Deep scars marred his skin, and where his eyes should have been, there was nothing but darkness. Man or beast, I couldn't tell. I tried to speak, but my voice failed me. Cold dread seeped into my chest. Then he moved. Slowly, deliberately, he began walking toward me. My instincts screamed at me to run. I bolted into the forest, branches whipping against my face, the ground uneven beneath my feet. The trees seemed to close in around me, their shadows twisting into traps. Every path I took forked into endless corridors, and no matter where I turned, the figure was always there. The hiker. He didn't run, nor did he pant, yet with each passing moment, he drew nearer. I tripped, landing hard and twisting my ankle. Pain shot through my leg as I glanced back, expecting to see him. Instead, he was gone. Relief washed over me. My ankles were weak and I needed to stop and make a fire to warm myself. I found a secluded spot, a small indentation in a large rock where I could fit in and make a fire. My hands still trembled as I struggled to start it. When it finally caught, I sat up, watching for any sign of him. But there was nothing. It was silent, too silent. I lay down to rest for a moment, because I had no idea what was coming next. But as soon as I closed my eyes, the image of the figure in the raincoat kept flashing before me. I couldn't sleep. My mind raced, replaying everything that had happened. Who was he? Was he dangerous? Would I even make it out of here to tell my story? I reached for the voice recorder I'd brought with me. I hadn't planned on using it, but now it felt like my only lifeline. I didn't know what would happen after this, or if I'd ever make it home or see my mother again. But one thing was certain. I wasn't ready to give up hope just yet. I didn't want to continue the hike anymore. Honestly, I was terrified. So I made up my mind that at dawn I would turn back and start my journey home. When morning came, I got to my feet, ready to go back, but everything felt different. The road had changed. The trail was not the same. I pulled out the map, but it felt as if I were holding a map of another place entirely. My head spun as I tried to make sense of it. I was lost, completely lost. Panic seized me, but I didn't stop to think. I picked a direction and started walking, then running as the forest around me twisted into a maze of unfamiliar routes. Every way I took seemed to lead to a dead end. The trees grew denser, darker. I pushed through thorny bushes, my body aching. I forced myself upright, leaning against a branch for support. That's when I heard it. A whispering chorus, as if thousands of voices were murmuring together in unison. Don't turn back. Keep moving forward. Desperation set in, and I limped down the rugged terrain, but it stretched on endlessly, farther than I had remembered. The sky darkened unnaturally fast, as if night was falling too soon. Finally, I reached a fork in the trail. Before me stood a rusted pole with two weathered wooden signs pointing in different directions. One sign was nearly unreadable, but the faint word safety could still be made out in faded letters. The other sign showed a faded image of a star, with the word destination beneath it, its paint almost completely worn away. There was something strange about these signs, something that felt like a warning. The words suggested a choice, but the meaning behind them was unclear. My hands trembled as I looked at them. Safety? Destination? Was this a decision I was meant to make? After a moment's hesitation, I chose the path marked safety. The moment I moved forward, he appeared, closer this time. The man in the raincoat. His coat was soaked, water dripping from it as if he had just stepped out of a storm. I couldn't breathe. My heart raced. "Who are you? Please don't hurt me," I whispered, my voice trembling. He didn't answer. He simply stood there watching. Then, as though he had been waiting for this moment, he spoke. "You shouldn't have come this way," he growled, his voice low and menacing. Before I could react, he pulled something from his coat, something sharp and gleaming. A sickle. Its blade caught the dim light, and I froze. Panic surged through me as I turned and ran. Branches slapped my face, and the ground beneath me seemed to shift, uneven and treacherous. My breath came in ragged gasps. I reached the riverbank, gasping for air, my legs weak beneath me. The water stretched before me, endless and cold. There was nowhere else to go. I pulled the recorder from my bag, my hands shaking. "If I don't make it out of here," I whispered, my voice barely audible, "I want everyone to know what happened. I want my story to be heard." With a heavy heart, I dropped the recorder into the waterproof compartment of my backpack and tossed it into the river. When the voice recorder was discovered, it only left more questions. The story remained incomplete. The police launched a search, but found neither her nor the figure she described. Maya's mother was devastated, her heart shattered. She muttered to herself, "She walked the trail. She belongs to it now." Days later, an unexpected knock came at her door. When it was opened, she found her daughter, lying unconscious on the doorstep. Her eyes were gone, empty sockets where they should have been. No one could explain what had happened. When she awoke, something was wrong. Her eyes were the least of it. Her voice was flat, emotionless, as she spoke of the Appalachian Mountains as though it was an old friend. You've made it, for now. Thank you for joining on this horrifying journey. If you want more, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and to follow on other platforms. There are many more stories to come, and if you enjoyed this, please like the video. It really helps. Let me know your favorite part or any suggestions in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe, if you can.